Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to have you joining us today. I'm Judene Pretti, and I'm the director of the Work-Learn Institute at the University of Waterloo. A couple of housekeeping things to get us started. There will be time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. To share your questions throughout the presentation, use the event pane on the right side of your hop-in window. Click the Q&A and then ask a question. We will do our best to cover as many questions as we can, and we're very grateful to those of you who submitted some questions in advance. We'll also have an interactive poll running for the first section of the presentation. Please take a peek in your hop-in window on the right-hand side under the Stage tab and select the polls option to participate. If you don't see the polls option, just double check that you're in the Stage tab and not the Event tab, and we'll get back to those poll results in a little bit. Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm presenting to you today from the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, and I respectfully acknowledge their ancestors and elders past and present. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 10 kilometers on each side of the Grand River. I also acknowledge that as we come together today while staying apart, we are gathering on other traditional lands across the country. I acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we all share these lands today. Thank you. Many of you may be quite familiar with Waterloo. This slide highlights some aspects of what makes our university and particularly our co-op programs unique. The Work-Learn Institute at the University of Waterloo establishes and promotes quality standards for work-integrated learning, conducts research, and explores new models and approaches to talent development. We are certainly proud to be the host of this Future Ready Workforce series. This is the third event in this series, and we'll have one more in the fall, and we'll give you more detail about that at the end of today's presentation. As a brief recap to the two previous events in this series, in January, we hosted an event focused on recruiting next-gen talent, which was followed by an event in April where we discussed engaging the next generation of talent. At the end of today's presentation, we'll give you links to the website where you could find recordings and key summaries from those presentations if you're interested in learning more. But as we go into the topic of converting and retaining, which is today's topic, we'll be revisiting a couple of the things that we talked about in the previous two webinars, specifically as they relate to how you can bring talent into your organization, possibly as co-op students or interns, and how you can create the conditions that will make them want to be part of your organization in the future. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the speakers joining me today. We have Margaret Macbeth, co-founder and director, company strategy, people and culture of Nuclear Promise X, a nuclear innovation company. Margaret has worked in the nuclear industry for over 10 years and is also a researcher and PhD candidate at the University of Waterloo in the field of public health and health systems with a specialization in mental health. She is currently working on research related to the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and remote learning on students. Welcome, Margaret. We also have Jonathan Lee, a political science and business co-op student at the University of Waterloo. Jonathan will be completing his final undergraduate term in the fall, and then will be working full-time as a consultant at the Daisy Group, a national public affairs firm located in Toronto. John has completed multiple co-op work terms with the Daisy Group, and his main practice areas have included government relations, public relations, and strategic communications. John is also the most recent Co-op Student of the Year award winner from the Faculty of Arts. Welcome, John. And so here's what we're going to be talking about with you today. We're going to talk about checking the alignment of your organization's values with the values of next-gen talent. We're going to talk about how to create a supportive and connected company culture, and how to provide meaningful work and development opportunities, all with the goal of supporting your efforts to convert and retain top talent. Let's get started by talking about values. We did a study with students and employers to investigate their perspectives on values. we asked both students and employers to read about the values and motivators of a fictional person named Alex. In the case of students, they were asked to report on how similar they would consider themselves to Alex. And in the case of employers, they were asked to rate how compatible Alex's values were to the values of their organization. As well, employers were asked to comment on how similar Alex's values were to the next generation of talent. The list you see on the screen were the values that were underlying the statements given in the survey. The dimensions are based on Schwartz's theory of basic values, which suggests that there are 10 distinct values that are recognizable across cultures. This list of values also should look familiar to you because it's what we included in our interactive poll that we started at the beginning of the presentation. We asked you to share what you think the top values of next generation of talent are. And the poll results are a tie for stimulation and self-direction. And the third was achievement. So let's take a look now at what we learned in our study and how it compares to those poll results. Here's what we found. These are the list of values that the students reported, with the most important value listed at the top and the least important at the bottom. In the next column, this is what employers said their organizations valued. And then in the third column, this is what employers think the next generation of talent values. Let's take a look at the top three on the students list and compare it to what you thought. So self-direction showed up in our poll results, but achievement and stimulation were further down the list of what students reported valuing. When we look at what topped the list for students, it was benevolence, that is helping others who are close to you. Further down the list, benevolence showed up for employers as far as what was consistent with their organization's values, and even further down the list for what employers thought students' values would be. Self-direction made the top three in all lists, as well as in our poll results today. That is, it's a top value reported by students, consistent with what organizations value, and consistent with what employers think students value. Hedonism, or having fun, was something that was ranked third on the students list, was about halfway down with respect to organization values, and was at the top of the list of what employers thought students valued, but differs from today's poll results. Now, when we stand back and look at these three ordered lists, a couple of things are notable. If we look at the left two columns, the top 5 values are consistent across the list of what students say they value and what employers say their organizations value. They're just in a different order. So that's an important thing to notice. What's more interesting is the gap between the list on the right with the other two lists. That is, the bigger gap isn't between what students and organizations value, but between what employers think students and organizations value. And so that might be a gap worth thinking about. An important note to make is that in this same study, 50% of the students involved said that they were unlikely to accept a job that matched their skills, but not their values. So when we think about this in the context of conversion and retention, it's important for organizations to keep a pulse on the alignment between next-gen values and their organization's values, remembering from the findings of our study that the bigger gap isn't between what students and organizations value, but instead between what employers think students value. Ensuring that there isn't a mismatch between what you think they value and what they actually value will be important in considering what motivates them. A lack of understanding about next-gen values and what motivates them may lead to retention issues, and then difficulty retaining next-gen talent may leave organizations frustrated with their efforts. And now I'd like to ask Margaret to share how her organization thinks about values and cultures with respect to converting and retaining next-generation talent.
Thanks, Judene. So pleased to be here. I'm Margaret McBeth. Here on behalf of Nuclear Promise X, which, as our name suggests, is a nuclear innovation, engineering, and tech development company. We founded NPX because of our strong belief that nuclear energy is key in fighting the climate crisis. And we work to make nuclear and other clean energy tech more cost-effective and widely adopted by integrating modern tools and technologies into the way that we operate these technologies. Our company is relatively young. We've scaled quite quickly and have grown from 4 co-founders to a team of well over 100 employees in the last 3 years. One of the other reasons we founded NPX is because we wanted to make an impact in the industry for the betterment of our country and the world, but we also really wanted to create a team that had strong values and a strong sense of giving back to our communities. And we do this and create a workplace where our team can really live these values in 3 key ways. And those ways are trying new things, so making innovation our top priority and bringing that innovation, that mindset of solving important problems and trying new things, not just to the work that we do, but also to the community initiatives that we are a part of. Doing good things, so community involvement is an ongoing prioritized effort within our company. We actually have twice a week company-wide meetings that are dedicated to community initiatives. We have a home-built app that tracks them like projects, tracks our impact, and we move fast. We bring our startup mindset to community initiatives. And I want to tell a quick story that I think really illustrates how we do this. So you'll see on this slide, this was our first employee, actually, Ali. And about 2 years ago, Ali convinced us that we needed to buy 3D printers. He didn't have really a plan in mind for that. And in fact, spent about 8 months building little tchotchkes and trophies like the one you see here. And we thought, oh my, this was kind of a waste of money and time. But what happened when the COVID-19 pandemic struck and everything was shutting down, we realized that the community in which our company was located, which is quite rural, had a severe shortage of PPE. And within 24 hours, our company had come together. We were sharing molds for printing face shields. Within less than a week, one of our offices was fully converted into a 3D printer print shop. We had libraries and schools and businesses donating their 3D printers. And our team ended up building and distributing thousands and thousands of face shields and ear savers to first line healthcare workers and frontline workers. So the impact was there, and it wouldn't have been possible without that innovation mindset. We've since used these 3D printers to partner with organizations like Enable to 3D print prosthetic limbs for people in need. And most recently, Parkinson's patients, we've been 3D printing specific pill bottles to make it easier for them to take their medication. So it has made a difference, and it all stemmed from that mindset of innovation and the entire organization being encouraged to live the values. And on the next slide, just quickly, I wanted to show a couple of the more recent initiatives that we have that show how our employees really bring their ideas and passions. A lot of that is around the environment. Quite a bit of that is around social justice. We had a recent event where we engaged young, diverse girls into STEM and nuclear and solving a design challenge. We've co-founded a platform called Nuclear Against Racism, and more recently have been working on initiatives with the Indigenous communities where we work to highlight the impact of residential schools and to call attention to that and make change. So just a snippet of what we've been doing, but we've been quite effective at taking that startup mentality from our work projects to our giving back projects. And I'll turn it back to you, Judene.
Margaret. Thanks, Margaret. I think it's clear how students would see their values aligned with your organization's mission, both, as you say, in the nuclear space, but also in the giving back. I'd now like to ask John, when you think about values, how does an organization's values influence your decision to accept a job, to stay in a role, and how do your values align with job opportunities that you choose?
Great, thanks, Eugene. And I'd like to introduce myself as well. My name is John Lee. I work with the Daisy Group, and we're a full-service public affairs firm out of Toronto, servicing clients across Canada, anywhere from Ontario to Alberta, BC, and the East Coast. So a large part of what we do involves political work. And so in the value system, we don't necessarily have to agree. And one of the most special things about DAISY is many people in the company share a very diverse view of the political landscape. So we represent all parties. And at the end of the day, we all have very different views personally, but we work together to go and represent the best interests of clients. So building off of what Margaret was talking about, a large part of what we work with includes bringing in that small business mindset. We're a team of about 8 people at the moment. We're a very small firm, but we're an effective firm. And that has to do with teamwork. And that teamwork is a very big shared value. And I think it speaks to the idea of benevolence as well. People can expect to work for us and be treated fairly, be treated well, and to be treated as equal parts of a team. We look to each other for help, no matter of what role we have in the firm. And we all try our best to help each other succeed. And I think that's something that all students are looking for. They want to feel valued, and they want to feel like they're a part of a greater team and one that values them. So I think that's something that's very special about DAISY. To tell a bit of a story of my own, when I first interviewed with the company, one of the first questions I asked was, what's the culture of DAISY like? And perhaps that speaks to values, perhaps it speaks to culture. But the response was that it's a team that's built on supporting each other. And I think that's one thing that's critically important to retaining talent. You only have 4 months in many co-op situations to leave an impression on a student and hopefully help them develop in a career. And I believe the most successful employment opportunity, especially the one I've had with DAISY, is one that's been based on support, and it's been very memorable for me in general. So additionally, in public affairs, I believe it comes down to how we conduct our business. And the value orientation is very important here. We're taught at Waterloo to conduct ourselves with ethics, and we were taking many courses on that. And in my case, one of the things I've loved about DAISY is that the work is always ethical. It's ethical, it's honest work, but we work hard. And I think that's a value system that is important to today's young generation of talent, is something that we're taught quite often, something that I think we all value. So aligning oneself with that value system, I think, is very important to retaining talent and leaving a good, positive, lasting impression that may convert talent to being a long-term employee. But with that in mind, thank you, Judene, and I'd like to pass it back.
Great. Thanks, John. That's a great segue into our next section, where we're going to talk about support and connection. So, John, you referenced how important the feeling of support is to students when they're in those work experiences, and how it can make a difference in terms of what their post-graduation decisions are. For most organizations during the pandemic, support and connection have really changed as many have embarked on remote work. Our data analytics and reporting team have done some really interesting work in examining the words on job postings that lead to a higher number of applications. One of the categories of words that leads to a higher number of applications are related to company culture, and you'll see examples of those words here. I think you'll notice that there's some overlap between these words and the top values that students reported in our survey. In particular, when we think about students valuing helping others, that value might correspond to words in a job posting such as collaboration, people, community, change. When we think about the value of having fun, that might connect to words such as enjoy, challenge, creative, social. Now, of course, it's not just about how to attract new talent to roles. It will be important that the words used on job postings to recruit new employees correspond to the actual culture and roles within the organization if the goal is to convert and retain top talent. A study that we published last year explored hiring managers' experiences with co-op as a talent pipeline for their organizations. What we heard from hiring managers across sectors and organizational size was that co-op and other forms of work integrated learning played a key role in their talent management strategies. The study uncovered a couple of insights that I'd like to share. Hiring managers spoke about the pressure of finding and keeping the right people. They identified the short-term nature of co-op or will experiences as a way of reducing risk for the organization, because the student and the company have the work-term experience as a bit of a trial run. When hiring grads, if they hire a candidate who has previous work experience in the organization, the new employee already knows about the culture and its work, and the organization already knows what the new employee can deliver. The other aspect of using co-op as a talent management strategy that hiring managers highlighted was the need to continue that connection with students after graduation or after their work term before graduation. When students are identified as a potential good fit for post-graduation employment, the organization may want to think about how to stay connected to that student, to be on the student's radar. This may involve tracking graduation dates of top performers, maybe reaching out periodically to share updates on what is happening in the company, maintaining an online community of past co-op students to keep in touch with them, just to name a few strategies that some organizations use. The key is that there's an opportunity for organizations to maintain a link to their top performers with the goal of post-graduation recruitment. One of the breakout sessions we're offering after today's presentation is on the topic of career coaching and specifically how to have those professional development conversations with your early career professionals. And now I'd like to ask Margaret to share a little bit about how Nuclear Promise X thinks about student conversion and retention. Margaret?
Great, thanks, Judene. So student programs, new grad programs, and bringing great students and new grads into our organization is foundational for our company. I myself started my career as a co-op student at the University of Waterloo. I graduated and had a new grad opportunity with one of my co-op employers. And this is actually true of all of the founders of our company, and most of our leadership came into the industry through co-op and then new grad hiring programs. So it's a strategy that works quite well for the reasons that Judene talked about, giving us a chance to try out students, see the value that they can bring, and for students to experience the workplace and our culture and to understand if the work that we do and the culture we have is a good fit for them or not. So we take student hiring very seriously. We have students in the company every work term, and we actively have strategies and programs in place to retain and convert them into new grad hires. We see our students and grads as cultural co-founders of our company. We're a relatively young and still relatively small company, so it's very important that the students and new grads we bring in don't just fit with our culture, but that they're able to enhance the culture and be the light bearers of that culture, as we know that they will in no short time be the future leaders of our company. So we really try to enable pathways for students to bring their passions, their creativity, and their ideas, not only to the work that we do, but to help shape our culture. We're constantly asking for their feedback. How can we improve our onboarding, your experience, the projects that you're getting, the opportunities that you have to develop skills. So, and not only asking for that feedback, but then also, acting on it and improving the way the student and new grad experience based on it. A few things that we do to keep that connection going, as Judene mentioned, that's a very, very important part of retaining and converting students. So we not only track their graduation dates, but we make sure that when they're working with us, they're getting that constant feedback, they're sharing their feedback, they're getting really great candid feedback about their performance, their development, and the opportunities that we have for them to come back either for another co-op term or when they graduate. We also keep them connected to the culture. Once they leave, we have an alumni group. They're invited to our charity games nights and happy hours and holiday parties. We recently celebrated our 3rd year anniversary. We had a big virtual party, and many of our past students came back to join us for that. So keeping them involved in the culture is very important. And COVID has really changed that. Our company has more than doubled in size since the pandemic started. So going back to that, the importance of collaboration has been absolutely crucial to the student experience. They want to collaborate, they want to feel a part of the team, and we've done that in a number of creative ways. You'll see a picture here of our fully virtual office. We call it Office Titan, where everyone has their own avatar, and it's this very cool proximity-based video conferencing, so you sort of get that feeling of bumping into people, and we make a concerted effort to make sure that there are mentors and events and work sessions happening there so students can meet many people in the company. And on the next slide, I'll just show some of the creative ways that we've kept that culture going virtually. So we have a wonderful innovation incubator called X Projects. There's a little funny graphic of the X Projects team. That program is actually run by students. They run the innovation incubator at our company. They plan our hackathons. They bring amazing ideas to it every term. And so that's a foundational project or element of our company that students really have ownership of. We take health and well-being seriously, so we have virtual run and cycling challenges. We have a fantastic, fun charity games night that we do every week, where we're not only having fun together, but giving back to charities. And we just find fun ways to celebrate each other. There's a lot of memes, custom memes happening throughout the company, virtual hackathons. And on the next slide, you'll see something that is quite meaningful to me. As our company has grown, we've grown not just in numbers, but also in diversity of locations of where everyone is. So we have our innovation catalysts all throughout Canada, and this sort of started organically. We always send some, our new staff an NPX hoodie when they start, and people just started sharing pictures of themselves in these different and beautiful locations throughout Canada. And this has become kind of a neat thread that has tied us together, even though we're distanced, and has been a really wonderful way for students and new employees to sort of show that pride of being with the organization and that feeling of connectedness, even though we're apart. So turn it back to you, Judene. Happy to share this.
Thanks so much, Margaret. I love the efforts that your organization is making, and the idea of seeing each employee as a co-creator of the culture, I think is an excellent one. John, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit with us about how you think a company's culture can create a more supportive and connected work environment, and how your experiences have helped you build lasting relationships.
Right, absolutely. So I think very similar to Margaret's comments, I believe constant feedback and that team-based atmosphere is critical to having a good relationship with co-op students and with employees. So to give some more context, as I mentioned before, the Daisy Group is a very small team. We have a significant focus on teamwork and personal growth, and that's anywhere from being a vice president to an intern. We believe in helping each other grow and learn, and so it could very well be the intern offering knowledge to a vice president or to the president, and vice versa. We believe in supporting each other and building each other up, and a lot of that's done through sharing our knowledge. So a significant part of my day is spent throughout the pandemic has been spent on Teams, and in that case, that's either helping to work with somebody else and give them advice as to where I think they could do better and what they're doing well. And on the same side, I can speak with other of my colleagues and they'll give me the same feedback. And it's honest, it's candid, and it's supportive, and I think that's been a very important part of creating a very welcoming and open corporate culture that really helps people succeed. And it's made abundantly clear to all of our team members that we want each person to learn something when they're with the team, and we want them to really grow professionally. And that's a very important part of what we do. Our relationships are really built on support and trust. We have each other's backs when we need to, and we always want to see each other succeed. We win together, and sometimes we learn together, but we've grown to be a very tight unit as a result. So we've grown to know that we can trust each other for honest comments without judgment or without any hard feelings, but we want to see each other grow. So just to explain some of how my own work integrated learning experience have helped me build lasting relationships, one of the most special things I found with the Daisy Group was that from my first day with the organization, I was welcome to join client calls, I was encouraged to be part of them, and then slowly I was given speaking roles and the ability to manage certain parts of client files. I've been able to take on more responsibility gradually, and while it can be a lot of responsibility at times, I always know that I have a team that supports me and will help me succeed and will help me navigate certain challenges if there's various areas in my problem-solving skills that I may lack. So as such, I've developed fairly strong relationships with groups including the government staff that I deal with through my government relations job, as well as my own clients. And through those relationships, that's helped me to build a sense of security and create a bit of a more broad professional network that I think is unmatched in many other firms. So I think the most special thing about Daisy is their ability to really enhance the opportunities for learning and really encourage staff to develop professionally. And that would be my personal take on that. So thank you, and back to you, Judene.
Thanks, John. I think you've highlighted what some really critical aspects of what early career professionals are looking for in terms of their work with organizations. The next topic we're going to talk about, which that leads us very nicely into, is about meaningful work. We define this as work that provides both the opportunity to contribute as well as to learn and grow. This is tied directly to conversion and retention of student talent in two ways. Providing students with meaningful work will help make them more interested in returning to an organization because they will have a sense of how they can contribute and the opportunities they will have for growth within the organization, as clearly articulated by John. But providing meaningful work is also important for the organization. I interviewed an employer once who said, if I don't give them meaningful projects to work on that test their ability, I'm not going to be able to assess their capabilities and know whether this is someone I want to have on my team after they graduate. So I'm going to oversimplify the situation for a moment. When we think about these short-term work experiences, and we think about it both from the student and the employer perspective, there's a potential for tension. That is, from the student's perspective, they want to contribute to the organization while they're there. They also want to learn new things. That is, they don't want to only be given work that they see as straightforward or menial. From an employer's perspective, though, they have new students coming in every 4 months, and if the work they give them is not straightforward, it means that there needs to be some time spent training and supporting each new student in learning how to do the work, which one could think of in terms of a cost to organizational productivity. It was this tension that was the focus of research we've done. That is, how does the work given to students create a win-win such that both the organization and the student benefit? I'm not going to go into great depth on the research, but instead share with you some of the key insights. So the question was, how can we resolve the potential tension between the goals of the employer and the goals of the student? And one possible answer is to vary the importance and the challenge of the tasks given to students, or as labeled on this slide, vary the criticality and complexity of the tasks. Think about potential work given to students. Some of those tasks may be critical to the operation of the team or the unit. Maybe there are daily or weekly reports that if the student wasn't there to do it, someone else on the team would need to. In that case, those tasks have a high level of criticality. Because of the high level of criticality, it might be advisable to keep the complexity of those tasks low with respect to the student's capability so that the overhead for training the student and the risk to the organization in having the student do the task is relatively low. So one set of tasks given to students may be lower in complexity and higher in criticality. Even with a lower complexity, these tasks are meaningful to students when they can see the importance of them. That is, you make the explicit connection between the completion of those tasks and the goals of the team or the department. To counterbalance those, another set of tasks or projects given to students may be less critical in terms of timing. These may be things that you need someone to investigate, projects that have been on a wish list for a while. What that means is that the criticality of the tasks is lower, which then allows for the complexity or the challenge for the students in completing those projects to be higher. It can be something that students have more autonomy or flexibility in how they go about doing the project, which in turn increases the meaningfulness for the students. Combining tasks for students where there are some tasks from each of these types will create a role where students have the opportunity to contribute productively to the organization as well as continuing to develop their skills. I also wanted to share with you today some very recent analysis that our data analytics group has done with 2 new questions added to the work term recap survey that our co-op students complete. At the end of each work term, students complete a survey that asks them to rate their experience on a number of dimensions. One of the new questions that was added asked students to report on the likelihood that they would recommend this organization to a friend or a fellow student. Students' response to that question was most highly correlated with these two dimensions: opportunities to make a meaningful contribution and opportunities to develop new skills. That is, they were more likely to report a higher likelihood of recommending to others if they felt they had had the opportunity to contribute and learn new skills. We hear from many employers that hire co-op students that the value of the student they hire is as a brand ambassador for their company among the students' peer group. So the impact of the student's experience in your organization goes beyond the students that you hire. The second new question that was added to the survey asked students whether this was an organization they could see themselves working in after graduation. We found that there was a correlation between their interest in returning after graduation and the two dimensions on the previous slide, meaningful contribution and learning new skills. But the strongest correlation with this question was students' ratings of the opportunities they had to expand their professional network. That is, students who provided a higher rating on the opportunities to expand their professional network also reported a higher likelihood of returning to the organization after graduation. This is a really interesting finding as we think about the effects of remote work. If you joined us for our April event, you may remember that this dimension, opportunities to expand professional network, has experienced a statistically significant decrease during COVID. That is, while students are reporting the same or higher levels for other aspects of their remote work terms, including satisfaction, they are reporting lower levels of having the opportunity to expand their professional network. Since that dimension is tied to their likelihood to return to a company after graduation, it's a potential area for focus for organizations. What are the intentional ways that companies can connect students with others in their organization, even while working remotely, to help students build those professional networks? And now I'd like to ask Margaret to share her thoughts on meaningful work and how building connections can help with the conversion and retention of grads. Margaret?
Thanks, Judene. I think finding that balance between complexity and criticality of work is very important. And I think with students, you always want to give them an opportunity to shine within your organization and to make an impact. So I always say to our leadership team, students, we're out there scouting incredible talent for you. And you don't want to bench your A team. So we need to give plenty of opportunities for students to do meaningful work, take leadership responsibilities, and to network not just within our organization, but also within the industry in which we work. I think that's very important as well. So there's a few ways that we do this. When students start with our company, the first week is actually a full week hackathon, where we give students real challenges that either we are trying to solve as a company or we're trying to solve on behalf of our clients, as we put them into teams, and they spend that week getting training on many of the different tool sets that we use, meeting our experts and leaders throughout the company. We pair them with mentors and being given time to come up with a solution to their challenge for that first week. And then the following Monday, they actually pitch their solution to the entire company. And it's one of the sort of favorite events that we have. It's always a lot of fun. It's not high pressure, but many of the ideas and solutions that have come out of those first week hackathons have become new infrastructure for our company, new projects that we've pitched to clients. So right away, from day one, they're understanding that we believe in them, that we see them as integral part of the team as anyone else, and that we want to enable them to share their ideas and bring their ideas into reality with us. So I think that is a very important piece. And then also having, projects that aren't client related. So we have our innovation incubator, we call it X projects. Many of the students will pitch and lead X projects. Often this is, around sort of cutting edge tech or clean energy solutions. And while it's not project critical, it is an opportunity for them to take leadership and work towards converting an innovation project into potentially a client-facing project We have at least once a term, there's a company-wide hackathon that students participate in. We often invite the industry in to watch the pitches or to participate as mentors in those hackathons. So students are meeting our clients and customers from many different organizations. And then certainly they also get the project, the client-facing work, but those roles, they're getting a lot more support and development as they take on more responsibility. So we throw them into the fire where it's safe to do so. We give them a lot of support to be effective on the meaningful tasks where it's more critical and client sensitive. And I think, really seeing and having everyone in our organization bought into our students as our future leaders is very important. We don't see this as an HR program. Our leads are incredibly involved in selecting our students, in planning for their work terms, planning the projects that they'll be working on, and providing mentorship and support. I like to share this example. This young lady in the photo was one of our earliest co-op students. I think she joined when the company was barely a year old, and has been with us through her internships and now is a new grad, and she started with us when our products division was about 3 people, and right away took on leadership and visioning for that department, which is now well over 30 people. Our clients love her. We get almost daily amazing feedback about her. So she's really been able to handle the critical pieces of work that we do, but she also leads the culture. She recently started a wildly popular Toastmasters club. She's been instrumental in the setup of our innovation incubator. And so she really is, she's short circuit at that sort of leadership development piece and is at this point already a leader in the company. So student programs, work integrated learning programs are very important to really have that leadership pipeline in place. Over to you, Judene. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Margaret. I'm so impressed with the perspective of MPX with respect to how they're forward thinking about their leaders, and so great to see that students are given the opportunity to have those presentations in front of key audiences. What a great development opportunity. John, I'm thinking now maybe you can share with us your perspective on the impact of having opportunities to work on important and meaningful projects and the impact that has had on your decisions regarding future employment.
Great, thank you. I think that working on meaningful projects is a huge reason and a huge part of why I'm continuing to work with the Daisy Group and why I've really fallen in love with working with the company. Since the first day that I worked with the group, I was given a bunch of different meaningful projects, meaningful tasks that were very clearly contributing to the ongoing projects and campaigns that we had on the go. And with that, you knew that the work you were putting in was not just unmeaningless busy work. And I believe that's very clear, and it's very important to many students that while it's challenging to assign very important work in a 4-month period or an 8-month period for co-ops, students can really tell when work is a time filler or when it is something meaningful. And I think there's a pride that can be taken in these large projects. So to lean on some of the experiences that I have, within my 2nd or 3rd week at the Daisy Group, I was assigned a pro bono file that the company was working on, and it's renaming a street in Puslinch, Ontario called Swastika Trail. Now that street is still named that, and we're still working to have that street renamed. But I had the opportunity to take on my own client file, be the client lead on that, develop a relationship with the residents of the street, and work together with them. So it exposed me to the client-facing side of the business and taught me how to work with clients on an ongoing basis and build those relationships. As the other half of the project continued, I had the opportunity to meet with government officials and register as a lobbyist. So by February of 2020, I was a registered lobbyist, and as far as our company knows, one of the youngest in Canada. And that in itself was very special to me. We had the registrations published in an online political newspaper, and it was an opportunity to get exposure. And I had the opportunity to build many great relationships with talented MPs, MPPs, and senators from across the country. So that was the example of a project that really made me feel like I was an important part of the company. It made me feel valued, and it made me feel like I had the opportunity to learn. Instead of being directed as to how I should be doing the job, I would present a recommendation to the company's leadership every week as to what I plan to do. And then they would offer some suggestions as to what I could do better and what parts of the campaign they thought would be very strong. So instead of working under a lot of direction, I had the opportunity to lead, and that was meaningful in itself. So wanting to see that project through, as well as other projects, I continued to work part-time with the company and wanted to see all of these projects through to the completion. So that's really contributed to why I believe the company has been successful in keeping me around, quite honestly, and why I think other employers can go and make that work for a longer period of time. But it was certainly an honor to be part of this and do this as an early part of my career. Many other research firms or public affairs firms would limit you to research opportunities. So this is very special to have the opportunity to take on the role that a typical executive would take on in the portfolio. So I believe offering meaningful work and a meaningful opportunity to contribute and supporting your employees through that process is a huge contributor to making retention. And in my opinion, it is something that would be one of the most important criteria in deciding whether or not to recommend a job to other friends or students, or if I wanted to go back to a job myself. So with that in mind, I'd like to pass it back to Judene.
Great. Thanks, John. It's great to hear how organizations can create that space for students to show what they're capable of doing. On that topic, because it's so valuable to hear from students directly, I wanted to highlight that there is a breakout session after this presentation where we have a student panel who will be sharing their thoughts on strategies for organizations in converting and retaining the next generation of talent. And so as we wrap up and move into Q&A, I just wanted to leave you with a few takeaways. Consider work integrated learning as a way of building your talent pipeline. It is a proven strategy for many organizations because it allows them to identify talent at an early stage in their careers. It also reduces the risk of hiring because in some sense it's a trial run with a new candidate over time, and then over time you can cultivate the relationship and loyalty. Openly share your company values and culture, looking for alignment and gaps to strengthen company culture and overall sense of community within your organization, particularly as organizations to continue with remote or hybrid working environments. Provide meaningful work by balancing opportunities to learn new skills with opportunities to contribute to mission-critical projects, and identify ways to help the next generation of talent expand their professional networks. Now I'm going to move over to open up for Q&A. We do have a few questions that have come in the registration form. So I may start and welcome Margaret and John back to answer some questions that have come in. And then if you would like to ask a question now, you can click on the event pane on the right side of the hop-in, clicking Q&A and ask a question. So, Margaret, maybe I'll start with you. How do you think the post-COVID environment will affect the conversion and retention of young talent?
Ooh, great question. Well, I think, as we're coming out of the pandemic, what we're seeing is that there's a lot more competition for talent. There's a lot of opportunities out there. People are leaving their current employers in droves. There's a lot more opportunity to work remotely. So I think, what we're seeing is that our students and new grads really value flexibility. So putting in ways of working that are flexible, that enable them to do meaningful work, but also have the time that they want for themselves, and to have a bit of work-life balance is very important. And then I think the values piece is also critical. What is it that differentiates your organization from the other organizations and the other opportunities that students will have? What type of meaningful work can you give them? One thing we did recently is when we were hiring co-op students, we wanted to be able to differentiate our roles. So we asked our current co-op students, we said, can you make a quick video and talk very specifically about your experience, the good and the bad, and share a bit of, a real life example of the work that you've done. And that's been kind of game changing for us in terms of attracting students when they actually they hear from the horse's mouth what that experience is like and what they can expect.
That's great, Margaret. Thank you. And I think that also answers one of the questions that has come in, which is elaborating on what attracts students to specific roles in organizations, advice of events or examples. So I think that technique of tapping into your current students to give advice is a really good one. John, maybe you can talk a little bit about what you think is going to be the environment in post-COVID and what is going to be key issues with respect to converting and retaining young talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout the pandemic, I think remote work, as we all know, became quite popular for some and less so for others. In the case of my team, we had the opportunity to work from different areas, and we found that remote work was actually more effective than it was than working in the office was. It took time to get to that new point, but once we got used to the technology that we had at hand, we found that we were more efficient. We were actually communicating better, and we had the opportunity to work from different locations and what have you. So we really enjoyed the work-life balance that came with that. So I'm a bit biased on this question, but I believe that flexibility is a very important part of what I would be looking for in a place that I want to work. I think it's really important that offering different ways of getting through to your employees, making sure they're still trained well, and having a great relationship with their coworkers is still very important. But flexibility, I believe, will be a great aspect of keeping talent and tracking talent. And I think it's something that we've learned is fairly feasible to do.
Yes, I can speak to that too from our research perspective. We've I think been surprised by the findings around how students have felt connected to organizations despite being in a remote setting and maybe never having met their colleagues in a face-to-face environment. So it's definitely possible, and I think you've both hit the nail on the head with respect to flexibility. So a question that's come in, Margaret, that maybe you can talk a little bit more about is elaborating on the hackathons that you've done, how they started, and advice that you would have for companies that might want to implement that.
Yeah, one of my favorite topics. So the hackathon started super organically. We were a young company. We could all fit around one table, and often we would take, maybe a half a day or a couple of days as a group to try to solve maybe challenges we were having in the organization, like we need to build some new infrastructure, or we got an interesting challenge or opportunity for a client, and we thought, let's put our heads together and come up with a proof of concept that we could show them. But certainly as the company grew and as we went remote, we couldn't just all, get around a table and decide we're gonna do it this way. We had to put some more planning into it, but that's been really impactful and powerful. So we take the approach of a company-wide hackathon about once every 3 months. We have our innovation incubator team, which is generally made up of our co-op students. They come up with the theme. They come up with the plan, the schedule, and it's open to everyone in the company. So typically we'll get about 50 to 60 people participating. Most of our students always participate. Anyone can suggest a problem statement or challenge that they want to take on, and then we form teams. And we have a really, we treat it like, a very serious event. We have opening ceremonies, we bring in speakers, we have fun hack breaks, and it all culminates into pitches at the end and prizes. We often now will, our clients really like this. They think it's very fun, so they may suggest challenges or come and join us as judges or mentors, and in a very low pressure, fun way of doing it. So I think, setting aside the time, making it a company priority, and having some planning and creativity that goes into it is very important.
Wonderful, thank you. We have time for one more question, and then I think what we'll do is there's been some great questions that have come in, and so we will follow up either with the question asker directly, or we will include it in the materials that will be following the presentation. Jonathan, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how we retain younger talent who may be more comfortable in moving around in a gig economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I was on a 4-month work term program, so I was rotating every 4 months. And it was certainly with many of my colleagues and classmates, they will rotate around to different workplaces, and they'll choose to experience different things. In my case, I really enjoyed the work that I do, and it's a very small industry. And so in my case, the network building was a very large part of why I decided to stay with the company. I thought I had unprecedented access to be able to develop networks in a supportive environment. And I was given the opportunity to succeed. So that was a very large part of it. As I mentioned earlier, having meaningful work to work off of was also a very large part of it. So by being a file lead for certain accounts, you become very invested in the project itself. And as such, I became very much committed to the work that I was doing and wanted to see it all succeed and see it through to the very end. So knowing that I had the opportunity to continue working on them was a very large driving factor in me continuing to work there. So I believe, in short, meaningful work's a very important part of it. Network building is also a very large part. And the company's culture of having a very supportive environment and one that believes in helping you grow and succeed and actively tries to see you succeed is something that I valued and was a really big reason as to why I wanted to go back to Daisy.
That's great, Jonathan, and they're certainly lucky to have you. So one of the questions that we got that came in was, what are the 3 most desired aspects of an organization that next generation of talent consider priority? Maybe you have heard the answer to that through our presentation today, but certainly our various research projects would suggest that students are looking for connection, for being able to make an impact, and for having opportunities to grow. And that this question provides a nice segue into the breakout sessions that are going to follow the presentation, and I'll give you those details in a moment. But now I'd like to thank our guest speakers very much for their contributions today. We have some information about how you can stay connected with us. We will be sharing these slides with those who registered for today's session and a link to the video recording. Apologies for those of you who had challenges with the technology. A couple of things to highlight. We have an information newsletter that contains our latest research and information about upcoming events. You can sign up for that newsletter by visiting the website. There's also an option to sign up for the newsletter in the post-event message. And a second note to highlight, I mentioned earlier that the next event in this series will be in November, in the fall. It will be on November 17th, same time, and it will be about upskilling and reskilling the next generation of talent. Finally, we have a very short survey that we ask you to complete before you leave the keynote today. On the right-hand side, under the Stage tab, select Type Form. From there, hit OK, I've got 1 minute at the bottom to start the survey. And then here's the information for the 2 breakout sessions I mentioned. They're being held at 1 and 1:30, and you can dive into the topic of converting and retaining next-gen talent in more detail. Maybe some of the questions we didn't get a chance to answer, you can ask there. At 1, there's going to be a student panel discussing converting and retention. And at 1:30, we'll offer career coaching for supervisors, sharing some insights to guide professional development conversations with Gen Z. Thanks, everyone.